Hello and welcome to another episode of Breaking Through in Cybersecurity Marketing. I'm your host, Gianna Whitver, here with no co-host today because my co-host happens to be at a co-hosted event in Boston today. She's on a train. She cannot record a podcast on a train. It'd be very weird to all the other people on the train to listen to that one-sided conversation she'd be having. So Maria Velasquez, who's usually on, will be back next week. But we still have an amazing guest. We have Anne Cutler. She is Director of Global Communications at Casper Security. And Anne, we're so excited to have you on.
Oh, thanks, Gianna. So glad to be here.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to talk about what our topics today, about how you came up into cyber. You were actually a news anchor and reporter, right?
Yeah. It feels like a million years ago, but that was where I got my start. My very first TV job actually was in Casper, Wyoming. Very glamorous change of scenery after going to school at UCLA. But it was what I wanted to do forever. That was my dream and my passion. Got the evening anchor and producer gig with some reporting on the side because it's a small market and you do everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great, and it's taken me all around the country. I worked in Wyoming, in Nevada, down in Louisiana, New Orleans. That was a lot of fun. And then most recently in Washington, D.C., I was at Fox 5 D.C. as an anchor and a reporter there. So definitely kind of an unusual career path. I'm sure you don't get too many people on the podcast who started out anchoring in Casper, Wyoming.
I think we have gotten almost none.
Okay.
None before yourself.
For everything.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be weird if I said, yeah, we've had like 4 or 5, right?
Yeah,
That'd be a
all
little
the time.
strange.
Like totally normal.
We have had some reporters and journalists who have transitioned into cybersecurity from journalism, but usually writers. In fact, I don't think we've had anyone on air before.
Yeah. Well, one thing that people don't realize about the on-air talent is that you are a writer first and foremost. You know, people always see you on TV. They think of you as this face, this talking head. But really you're writing all of the scripts. If you're anchoring, you go in every single day. You know, I had to be on air. Oh gosh, at Fox 5, we were on air at 4:00 in the morning for the morning show. So I had to be at the station at 2:30 a.m. Can you imagine?
Oh, I can imagine. And I can imagine it being quite I can imagine you being like fresh out of UCLA and like going to bed at like 10 and getting up at 2 to get to the station.
Yeah. Wild times. This is why I don't do it anymore, because I can no longer work those hours. But, you know, it was great. And you do become this really, I think, strong writer when you work in that field, because you're going through scripts all day long. You know, you're either writing them or editing them. You're creating content for social media. You're creating articles for the website. I mean, there's this whole huge range of content that you're creating every single day. And it really does kind of set you up for a transition into marketing, or in my case, communications.
All right. So before we go on one more step in your journey, your career journey, I do want to know, what was your favorite story you reported on over those years while you were being a reporter and being an anchor?
Oh my gosh. So I would definitely say it was when I worked in New Orleans, and I worked on a show called News with a Twist, which sounds ridiculous because it was. I love it. Wonderful station, wonderful show. It was one of those like only in New Orleans things, right? And I actually, when I got assigned to that show, I was working on the morning show. They said, "Hey, we're launching News with a Twist." It's set literally in a bar, literally.
Oh,
And they put me on the show as their like one and only reporter. And I remember going home crying that day thinking, what has my career come to? But it ended up being incredible because I got to do long format storytelling. I got to pick all of my own stories. I wasn't just chasing, you know, if it leads type stories. And I did some of my best work during that. So I remember I did one about invasive Asian carp. And I interviewed the chef. He was trying to sell them to eat, even though they're They taste good, but they have a lot of bones. But I had the best quote from this guy, and he had a thick French accent, and he goes, "If you cannot beat it, then you must eat it."
That's pretty
Ridiculous.
good.
It was good. It was good. But it was so fun. And we went out, we were in the bayous, and these carp were everywhere, and they were physically jumping into the boat. There were so many of them. So that was kind of wild. Another story on the kind of flip side of that was a really powerful series that I did where I went to Angola prison, and they had some of the highest rates of violence within prison walls. If any, I think it was the number one of any prison in America, maximum security penitentiary. And so I go there and I did a 3-day series on how they're using a faith-based program. And it wasn't, a specific religion, but sort of a faith-based program to help reform the inmates and teach them the value of kindness and, respect for human life and all of these like very basic things, that, a lot of these people had such tough upbringings, didn't have that sort of moral guidance and foundation. And that's, what landed them there. So I got to stay in the prison. I, at numerous times, was because they always had the door behind you, locked in cells with
Mm-hmm.
multiple inmates, different areas of the prison ground. But I remember doing a story on their hospice program where the older inmates who are dying because most of the people there have life sentences
Yeah.
and are in hospice are being cared for by younger inmates who volunteer to work the hospice program. And there was a gentleman I interviewed, and he was crying to me because he was so touched by the kindness of this younger inmate. And it was one of the first times in his life where someone has shown that type of selfless kindness to him. And he passed away about 2 days after that interview. But let me tell you, that sticks with me. It really does.
I didn't even see
And
the segment and it's sticking with me. I'm like tearing up. That's so sad and
yeah,
wonderful at the same time.
I
We'll
know.
definitely put a link to both of those in our show notes for our folks. We're going to try it.
I'll see if I can dig them up.
Yeah,
I don't
and you'll
know
have
where they
to.
are. They're somewhere in the ether of the internet. This was so many years ago, but I'll see if I can find them. Yeah, absolutely. I'll see what I can do.
Awesome. And then how did you get so reporting on all these it's like almost human interest stories, right? You're doing this cool stuff in New Orleans. How'd you get into cyber? It's such a I mean, it's not a super long leap, Cyber is also or it's trying to be human interest stories. It's
Yeah,
affecting the day-to-day lives of many
yeah,
people around the
yeah.
world. But how did you get into cyber?
Yeah, I guess it was a bit of a puddle jump for me. So I
Hmm.
was working in Washington, D.C., and I was actually freelance when I was at Fox 5. So it was cool because I worked a little bit of everything. I would anchor some days, morning show some days, evenings, weekends, reporting in the field, the political show, you name it. It was great. Got to do so much. Really, again, another highlight of my career during that time. And I think about some of the cool stories I got to cover. And when you're in DC, I mean, you're reporting matters. You are covering really incredibly important content. So it was
Hmm.
super cool, but it was taxing too. I've got two adorable little boys and, they're getting into, or we're getting into school at the time. And having that type of schedule and having done it for so many years, and I'm not young, and I see other people coming in who are younger. I'm like, they can survive on the 4 hours of sleep. It's a little tougher for me. So I decided, hey, I've had a good run. Let's find something new. Right at the beginning of COVID, really. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago. And I decided to take the exact like polar opposite path, going from this like very glamorous, very intense role, on TV, working all the time to the federal government. But boy,
Mm.
did that sound appealing at the time. Let me tell you, it was a lovely transition, and I ended up at a really cool place. It's the Department of Homeland Security's Science and Technology Directorate.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, most people have never heard of them, but it is the research and development arm for DHS. So when you think about, everything that DHS does, from border security to airports to the Coast Guard, customs, all of these different things that they're dealing with, and what technology helps make that happen, helps, protect the people who are in these roles, helps facilitate their work.
Mm-hmm.
So, one thing that we created was for the Coast Guard. And when they're out on the high seas and they're intercepting a boat, it could be, who knows, it could be refugees, it could be pirates.
Mm.
But more often than not, they're not speaking English.
Mm-hmm.
And so they need to translate in very rough conditions on the high seas
Right.
without, a cell phone there to make things easy for us. They don't have their iPhones on them. And so we created this like really hard, secure, durable translation box essentially that they can use. It can get wet, it can be battered around, and it uses satellite. So really cool technology, tons of great stuff. They did some research, when COVID was really so scary and so unknown to us. They were doing research on that front. All sorts of cool work, and I loved it. And then one day, CISA came knocking, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which
Mm-hmm.
also falls under DHS. And they said, hey, we need someone who can do proactive media for us. They
Oh,
were the newest government agency, and cybersecurity, when you think about just in the past 5 years, how now it's a household topic, but
yeah.
it hasn't been the case for all that long, really. And it wasn't talked about in the same way that I think it is now. So they came to me and said, hey, like, we need someone on the media team who can kind of strategize. You've got this TV background. You can get that proactive press. Would you be willing to kind of transfer over within DHS and come work for us? And so it was an awesome opportunity. And I was there for some huge cybersecurity incidents, for Log4j,
Mm-hmm.
Log4Shell, I guess, Colonial Pipeline. Whew, won't forget
Fun.
that Mother's Day weekend.
Yeah.
That was wild. When they go, hey, so there's this cyber attack that might shut down all fuel for the entire Eastern Seaboard. We need a media person on it. So
Mm-hmm.
got to do some really, really impactful stuff there. And then probably the biggest one was when Russia invaded Ukraine, and we had to warn all critical infrastructure owners and operators about the threats, the cybersecurity threats associated with that, what we expected, what they can do to prepare, because, protecting critical infrastructure is part and parcel to what they do at CISA. And so really making sure that, the public sector, the private sector, that critical infrastructure is all prepared in case we see either direct cyber attacks as a result of the war or indirect kind of, cascade effects of it.
Yeah.
And we did a really cool campaign called Shields Up. And I think it was actually, stemmed from Star Trek. Because our
Oh,
director,
cute.
Jenny Sterling, is like a big Star Trek fan. She's awesome. So it was a Shields Up campaign. And, probably the highlight of that campaign is that we got to do a really neat sit down 60 minutes interview with that, warning America about here's what you can do to stay cyber secure.
That's amazing. I love
Yeah.
that it blends again, that human interest, that hey, it's security and it's about the government and it's about war and what's happening in other countries essentially. Um and how that can affect the everyday citizen. You got on 60 minutes.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's storytelling. That's what we do. We tell stories, we tap into people's emotions. When, I talk about the series at Angola prison, most people think of that prison and they don't get tears in their eyes. But I think it's really powerful when you can evoke emotion from someone and use that storytelling across, cybersecurity, prison reform, and invasive Asian carp as well. It doesn't matter what the subject matter is. If you can connect with people, I think you can tell some really powerful stories.
Let's triple click. And I'm saying triple click because Maria's been saying double click and I'm trying to one up her. She's not on today. Let's triple click on the colonial pipeline work you did as well, because that
Yeah.
was something that was, it was interesting. I feel like it was a unique moment. And I've been in the industry maybe, 7 plus minus years now. it was a unique moment in that it was on, or would have been on, American soil, right? It created a
Yeah.
frenzy. People were worried about gas. People were worried about being able to fuel up their car or their home generators, or being able to access to transportation. What was some of the work you did there?
Yeah, yeah, it was a watershed moment for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And that was a turning point, I think, for both CISA, for the cybersecurity industry, and for all of those reasons that you laid out. We had an amazing opportunity to take something that was so scary and so impactful, and how do you leverage that, and not capitalize on it, like that's
Mm-hmm.
putting it kind of poorly, but how do you leverage something that might not be positive but really, find that silver lining and get some positive impact out of it. And, what we did is we used that to really hit home with America why cybersecurity matters to your everyday life. And that's such a perfect example of kind of the critical infrastructure impact. Imagine if
Mm-hmm.
that had happened to your water system and you can't brush your teeth when you wake up in the morning. Or imagine if that happened to the electric grid and your alarm doesn't go off because your lights aren't working and your power's not working and you can't go to work or school.
Yeah.
These are all things that impact people in such a tangible way. So I think, when I look back at the team that we had at CISA during that time, in the direct aftermath of that event, and as it was all unfolding that Mother's Day weekend, I was just fielding inquiries. Oh my gosh, I can't tell you how many reporters were pinging us. It was like the phone was beeping, 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 beeping. But working with CISA, with DHS, with the White House, getting that kind of unified government message out,
Mm-hmm.
and responding in that immediate kind of crisis mode of what is our position, and getting that out, disseminating that. Then, from that point on, you look kind of longer term, medium term, and then longer term. And we did a huge media blitz associated with that. We had incoming, but we also had some kind of opportunities that, we thought we could build some relationships, go on some morning shows, talk to CNN, things like that,
Mm-hmm.
that were kind of simmering in the background. And this was that opportunity to really take advantage of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what was amazing about our team is that I was there from this TV background. We had one of my colleagues who I adore, who's been in government forever. So he had that strong government perspective. And then we had a director who is so gifted at making content relatable. She can talk to anyone. And she is, I'm a firm believer that you don't have to sound like the smartest person in the room to be the smartest person in the room. When you can make things understandable to anyone, that is a gift, and that is a sign of intelligence. And she is such a firm believer in that. So, Jen would take the content and the talking points that we would prepare, and she would convey them in such a heartfelt way and really share this message with America about, this is one small thing that happened. This is one pipeline. This is one ransomware attack. But think about how big this could be. This is why you need to make it a priority. So it was wonderful. We did, more interviews and media responses than I can count for that incident, but it really was, that moment where we entered the American consciousness in a way
Mm-hmm.
that we had not before.
That's amazing. To capitalize, not capitalize, because we just talked about that, but
Yeah. Yeah.
to be able to turn that bad moment into something that had a silver lining. Hey, now everyone's paying attention, which is what we as CISA want. We want people
Yeah.
to be safe, and they have to know
Yes.
about being safe in order to be safe, and they have to think about how it affects them. So
Yeah.
so now you're on the private enterprise side. How did you get over to Keeper Security?
Yeah, yeah. Well, government was fantastic, but I did have an interest in kind of going to the private sector, exploring that route. Also seeing what I could do, building a team and leading a shop, and really kind of taking ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had this great opportunity come up with Keeper Security. We have an amazing password management product for consumers, for all businesses. Everyone from small home offices all the way up to major multinational enterprises, and then public sector as well. We are FedRAMP authorized. So really, really great
Nice.
product, something, I could get behind. We
We
have
use
secrets
Keeper
management.
Security over at the Society.
I
So,
love that. I love that. Do you like it?
oh yeah, I really like it. We like it a
Good.
lot.
Good to hear. I feel like it's life changing. Once you go password manager, you never go back, right?
No, you can't go back, and you shouldn't,
Like,
by the way.
yeah.
Everyone should use a password manager.
Yes, yes. Public awareness message here. You should never go back from a password manager. That's our PSA for the day. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's our bread and butter. But then we also do secrets management, connection
Hmm.
management, and we're getting into privileged access management is our whole new beast now, which is really cool.
Wow.
So, I came in at a point where the company was growing. We had one round of investment. We've had a second round since I came. Really exciting. It was kind of a mid-sized business. So good infrastructure in place, great leadership, great product. But we didn't have this like huge communication shop in place. And I was able to come in and really develop and grow that for Keeper. And boy, whew, have we expanded in the 2 short years that I've been there. But it's been a wild ride. It's been super exciting. And I've really had the luxury and support to be able to chart my own course and do things the way I want to do them. And, I'll admit there is a bit of government bureaucracy that could be frustrating sometimes when you have a great interview opportunity and it takes a month and a half to get approval on it, and of course the government has to do that.
Hmm.
But when you're at a mid-sized company like ours, it is small enough that you can be nimble, you can jump on
Hmm.
things, you can take advantage of things and move fast.
So, moving into this role, Director of Global Communications, you said you've built an internal PR comms shop, is how you describe it. Can you
Right.
talk and share a little bit more about why you built it, how you built it the way you did, right? How big is it? What does it do? What do you do? And like
Yeah.
why you built it that specific way for Keeper Security.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a process, I think there was a lot of learning and expansion and building that all happened at the same time,
Mm-hmm.
But when I came in, I had literally one half of an employee that I shared with the marketing team. So I would not have described it as a comms shop at that point. It was a comms party of one. And we didn't have processes, we didn't have databases, we didn't have banks of, commentary and resources. And I'm strictly talking about the communication side. Our marketing function is very well developed and a lot of resources have been poured into that for a long time. We have the best marketing team. They are incredible. But, on the communication side, I think at my company, and I would say at a lot of companies, it's not always quite as big of a priority because you don't have that direct tie into revenue in a way that you do with
Mm-hmm.
marketing. So came in with, kind of a shared employee. We had public relations in the US for B2B and in the UK. And I kind of laughed because I took this job and I remember it being the director of global communications. I'm like, oh, global. I'm like, come on. It's like, we got a PR team in the UK. Boy, it is global. Let me tell you, in the 2 short years that I've been there, we've gone from that to PR teams in the US, UK, France, Germany, broader APAC, and Japan. So we are very global. We are very well resourced externally with incredible PR teams. Love them. They have done so much for us. We have just built up this incredible communications program as a team together. and could not have done that without their insight into all of these different global markets. Because as we know, what works in the US does not always work in Germany, definitely doesn't work in Japan. And you have to tailor all of your messaging, all of your content, all of your PR actions to that specific market. So externally, the team's gotten a lot bigger. Internally, I now have a wonderful PR communications manager. I have a social media manager under me who does specifically organic content.
Oh,
I work closely with the marketing team for, some of the paid social content and campaigns, for a lot of our event planning and things of that nature. And then I also have two incredible interns. And let me tell you, it just restores your faith in America's youth when you get two great interns on your team.
mm-hmm.
They are so hardworking. Shout out to the whole team because I love them. But special shout out to our interns because they come in 3 days a week and they bring these fresh ideas and so much energy. They are just rearing to go. They want to learn. They're sponges. And they've been awesome. So, team wise, that's kind of what I've built, going from a half an employee to four-ish, going from 2 PR teams to 6 now. And then, in terms of our functions and how we operate our processes, having to build all of that out,
Yeah.
when we do media commentary, when we're putting together content, if it's an award submission, whatever it may be, you don't want to reinvent the wheel every single time.
Mm-mm.
That is not, a smart or efficient way to do business. So we've been able to build up so much content and have these great processes in place. And that has, I would say, probably been the single biggest driving growth factor for us, is our ability to rapidly respond to whatever the task at hand is, because we have all of those systems and all of that content built up and in place, and it gets better every single day.
Yeah, it's amazing talking to many companies in the society, right? Some of them have underdeveloped internal comms functions, and then they hire an agency, and
Mm-hmm.
the agency comes to them with like a PR firm, right? And they come to them with
Yeah.
opportunities to reply, and they're not able to get even responses out because internally there's not a system and a process and
Yeah.
buy-in from everybody to say, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to reply to these comms, we're going to reply to these rapid response opportunities, and we're going to reply and try to push the voice out and get our message
Yeah.
out into the world because they just don't have it internally set up.
Yeah. And when you look at PR, when you look at communications, it is about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. You build up trust, you build up relationships, and reporters come to us now all the time
Nice.
because they know that we will give them good content fast. And we're not going to be plugging our product the whole time. That's not what this is about. It's about education. Do we share the value of our product? You betcha. That's what we're doing every day of the week. But we do so in a way that is, not promoting our own company. That's very vendor neutral and very educational. And that's key. But you're right. If you don't have those systems in place, you can't do that rapid response. You can't get things out in a timely manner. You can't do the amount of work that we now do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, oh, gosh, our rapid responses, when I first started, we might have a couple a week, and now we have probably 20 a week that we're doing
Whoa.
globally. And that's just rapid response.
Yeah.
That's not including the hundreds upon hundreds of media hits that we get pickups on for our press releases and our blog posts and our other content and things like that. So, we are churning out a lot every single day.
I asked you at the beginning what your favorite, story was when you were an anchor and reporter. Do you have a favorite media hit or a favorite story from your time at Keeper? Something that's gotten in the press?
Yeah, yeah. So, when I talk about how awesome our team is and all of these PR teams that we work with globally, they're creative. And I can go on there and say, like, let's tell a story. Let's make this relatable. Let's do something different. Think outside the box. And we had this idea for a cyber possum. So,
Like a
you know
possum,
how
like an animal?
like a possum, like an
Oh,
actual possum
like
that
it lives
like
in the
plays
garden. Yeah,
dead.
yeah, yeah. It plays dead. Uh-huh.
And their little legs go up in the
Yeah.
air and their little tail sticks up, and it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we are on the call and we're cracking up laughing about the cyber possum, and like some people are so scared of cybersecurity they just play dead, right?
Mm.
And so we did an entire survey about your cybersecurity animal. Who do you relate to?
Oh,
If you were a cybersecurity
like a
animal, who would you
like a
be?
BuzzFeed quiz?
Kind of, yes. It was like a cybersecurity BuzzFeed quiz, exactly. And we did a really fun report. The graphics were beautiful, but still very sleek, tied in with our branding and everything. It was very consumer focused. You could be, eagle eyed. You could be like a bull in a china shop. We had all these different comparisons. And let me tell you, the pickup on that report, the media ate it up as they should, because it was so fun and so interesting and unique. And I remember PC Mag picked it up and they did a whole article describing the different sort of animal personas. And they even took it a step further and had examples and things. And it made me so happy to bring back that little bit of kind of storytelling and creativity and the thinking outside the box that can get lost in the day to day when you were just talking about cyber attacks all day long and endpoint security and password management and zero trust and all of these buzzwords. To be able to do, an entire research report on a cyber possum was definitely a fun
Oh,
one.
that's so cute. We're definitely going to link to that. I'm sure that's findable. We're
Yes.
definitely going to link to that in the show notes. So, folks who are listening, you can
Love
go
it.
check it out and maybe even still take the quiz to see what sort of cyber animal you are. I don't know if it's still live.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Um, and last question before we move on to our final topic, which is about sports partnerships, which will be really fun. I know a few folks have
Yeah.
done some sports partnerships, and I can't wait to hear about Keeper's experience.
Yes.
So, one thing I heard you say is that your team is also working on the organic social, which
Hmm.
is potentially controversial, maybe. I mean, I
Yeah.
have seen organic social housed in marketing, seen it housed in comms.
Hmm.
How do you manage that organic social presence when you're talking about something that maybe marketing wants to also influence, since organic social has so many pieces to it? And then also, do
Yeah.
you work on I'm curious because influencer programs are growing and growing and growing. Do you do anything
Yeah.
with influencer programs as well?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
ask like 10
Multi-part
questions in
question
one.
there. So,
No, I know. I'm always like, hey, tell me like 5 things, and I hope you remember all of them.
okay. It's like a job interview, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, let me take some notes here. But yeah, let's start with the organic social. It's a lot of fun, but social's a beast, man. That is so much work. And you need someone who is so strong and is creative and is interesting and understands all the different platforms. We're on Mastodon. That is a technical audience right there. Same with Reddit. But then you go on Instagram and like we did a Saved by the Bell meme the other day, right? So it is a challenge, but a really fun one. And at our company, we haven't had any of that push and pull over like paid versus organic. I think, our paid content is really pushing for the business side of the house. So it's primarily LinkedIn. We're not doing paid content on like Instagram really. So I think we divide it more by platform kind of than anything. And we always take that educational approach. Even when we're doing a Saved by the Bell meme, it's educational. And so it's been good for us and it's worked out really well. But you're right. It can be a bit of a challenge. And I think as companies grow and teams grow, and then you look at the type of content you're creating. Are you doing content for your leaders specifically? Are you doing big campaigns, case studies, testimonials, things like that? And you start getting different teams involved. It takes a lot of coordination, and it takes someone who is a very strong, I like to say, belly button, who can bring all the parties together, and all those different elements, and really be able to come up with a good, very strategic social media plan that resonates with the audience on each platform, but also really embodies that voice of the company and is true to the company. So, we're growing. We've had our audience continue to grow week over week for as long as I can remember, knock on wood. So it's been really good. It's been great for us, and the marketing team's been awesome. In terms of influencer, question number 2.
I'm glad you remembered because I
have
didn't.
an influencer program. We have dabbled with influencers. What we have found is that it has to be authentic. You need to find someone who actually really uses the product and really loves it and understands it, because it's very easy to get a new lipstick and go on Instagram and like do a makeup video and post it and link in bio. That's not the case with a password manager.
Yeah.
You can't show it physically the way you can other products.
Here's all my passwords.
So, right? So we've had some influencers we've worked with who've been, a little more on the creative side. We've had some directly in our space or a bit more straightforward. I call it the wild, wild west because it changes every day. And you can have an influencer who has 1 million followers who might get 5,000 views, and one who has 40,000 followers and gets 300,000 views. It's crazy. You never know. It's also exciting, and it's also a great way to build trust, build up relationships, and kind of get that message out, meet people where they are on the platforms that they like and the mediums that they use. And, if it's via YouTube or Instagram, cool. That's great.
Awesome. Well, before we go, last topic before we go on to our game, because we're going to make you play our game, Anne, even though Maria's not here. Okay. So I'm going to win. Right off the bat, I'm predicting that. Tell us about this sports partnership you launched.
When I talk about our growth and being at a company our size, oh my gosh, when I started 2 years ago, I would not have imagined that we would do something of this scale or size. And now here we are in 2024. And at the end of April, we launched a sponsorship of Williams Racing, which is a historic legacy Formula One team. They are one of the winningest teams ever in Formula One. They have incredible drivers who've driven for them over the years, and they are awesome. It's so fun. It is so cool when you think about the alignment, when you think about the fact that, we're in this sport that is so technology driven and data is so important, every single bit of analytics that they're doing about performance, about how they build the car, when they put something into the wind tunnel, all of this data that they're gathering and protecting all of that is so critically important. It's this, you see the two drivers out there at the races, but you don't always think about the huge team behind it. And I think about that with all of our developers, our amazing team here at Keeper, and it just fits. So we're super excited about it. We are sponsoring them for 2 years. It's a global sponsorship for the whole season. So it really aligns with our growth. We launched a new office that we opened in APAC, specifically in Tokyo, Japan. Yeah, that was last May. And so we're expanding. We have offices now in the US, in Europe, in Asia. And now we're at all these races, and we are on the Williams car in all of these amazing places all around the world, working with this incredible team and, finding really cool ways to kind of activate that partnership, show that alignment, and really kind of spread the message of cybersecurity and password management to this whole audience of Formula One fans around the world.
I love that Formula One ties so directly into this story, right? It's a team, It's very technical, it's a car, like it's a machine. It's not track, which I'm sure is technical in
Yeah.
other ways. You got to buy shoes, but it's not as data heavy and tech heavy as a car. Were there other
Yeah.
sports that you considered that you were kind of like looking at, or
Totally.
yeah?
Yeah, yeah. We actually looked at NASCAR for a brief
Ah,
time, and I almost signed with a team. It didn't work
mhm.
out. These things happen, maybe blessing in disguise, because NASCAR is very US focused, right?
Mm.
And we are a global company. So I do think Formula One was a better alignment that way. We've looked at some other sports like tennis and golf. We like the idea of a sport where they travel all around in all these different areas. When you sponsor an NFL team or a, NBA team or whatever it may be, you're kind of in a market, and you got the fans of that market. You got the people who might see it on TV a little bit here and there, but it's not like when you are going from city to city and country to country all around the world. So that was a big priority for us. And the tech, it's just cool. Like one of our placements is on the top of the steering wheel, and Alex Albon had this insane overtake during the race last weekend in Montreal. And he went like around one car and then another one. He passed like two drivers at once, like split them going around a turn. It was crazy. They're calling it like the overtake of the past like 3 seasons. It was amazing. It was all over social media. Formula One with their 30 million followers was posting it, and they're showing the driver view, and he's holding on, and it was keeper security on the steering
Oh my
wheel. And
gosh.
that is so cool. And their steering wheels look like gaming consoles. It's all buttons and stuff. It's not like a circle. And it's so tech heavy, and it's like this incredible technology. And you got keeper right on the top of that, right in the center of that shot. And that is where I'm like, this makes sense. This was the right move for us. And it's been
That's
great. We've
amazing.
loved
I don't
it.
even know how
And
you could
yeah,
measure that in terms of impressions. It must have been millions, if you think about it. Like
yeah.
everyone watched
Well,
on
I mean,
TV,
we
everyone on
can
social.
totally. And then the traditional media, and you look at the reach of any articles that were written about that. Nielsen does track the airtime and the value of the coverage as well, which is interesting. So if it was like, positive, negative, how good of an angle it was of the car, things like that. The social, you can track all of that. The ROI, you get downfield, like, I don't know about actual conversions from that, but it's a brand awareness at the top of the funnel that leads down. Yeah. So it's awesome. It was a good weekend for us.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And we're going to put a clip of that in the YouTube version of this episode,
Oh,
and maybe here on the podcast episode. Here, listen to that, the car going around the track.
vroom,
Thank you, Anne.
you're welcome. I'm here for you. I got you covered.
All right. Well, I think it's time for our game. So, Anne, every episode
Okay.
we play a game in which I usually lose, except for today because Maria's not here. So we're gonna play a
Oh,
game where we guess what you would be doing if you were not doing what you're doing now, or doing what you used to do. So I know you're an anchor. I know you weren't a reporter, a journalist, a television anchor. Now you worked in the government. You worked on comms
cool.
for the government. Can't say you're going to go be doing that. Can't say that you're going to work at a security company doing PR. We're going to cross PR entirely off of the table. So, what I think. Sorry, let me get closer to the mic. Pineapple. What I think you would be doing, and this is somewhat cheating because I happen to have seen some of the books that are in your household, is I think you'd be a celebrity chef of some kind.
Okay. So for the listeners, my microphone may or may not be propped up by 4 cookbooks right now. That's funny. I love to cook. Maybe I would.
Okay.
I honestly, I think you might be onto
I
something.
think I'm not, because you're being very nice and saying maybe I would. So what was in? I'm still gonna win because Maria's not here, so it's a automatic win. So what would you be doing
Automatic.
if you could do anything in the world?
That would be one thing. I also adore interior
Ah,
design
that
and
was literally my second
building.
one. Okay.
Oh, I love that stuff. It's my favorite. We just did a kitchen renovation, and like my husband and I will get our hands dirty. we didn't for this job. We hired out. But I mean, we've done some big stuff. I've done kitchens before and whole bathrooms and your knuckles get all bloody, but it's very rewarding, let me tell you. So I don't know, but I do love to cook. So I'm going to give it to you. I think you're right. I think you're onto
I
something.
think you'd have like a whole suite of shows on HGTV and Food Network, right? You'd be one of those combo, like, I can flip a house and I can flip pancakes, one of those multi-talented
I
personalities.
love
I
it.
think you'd be great at
I'm a
that.
multi flipper.
Well, Anne, thank you so much for being on the show today. Where can people
Oh.
find you if they have questions about the show?
Yeah, well, reach out to me anytime at Keeper and then find me on social media. I'm on all the different platforms. Anne Cutler, very easy. Usually I'm wearing a Keeper security hat, so you'll find me. And Gianna, thank you so much for having me on. This was a delightful conversation, and it's awesome to have this platform. So I really appreciate it from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you for being on. It would have been quite a dull show if it was just me with no Maria also talking for 48 minutes to myself. So thank you so much, Anne, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and more about the Keeper Security Communications program. Very interesting stuff. If you want to be on Breaking Through in Cybersecurity Marketing, send an email to podcast. Honestly, either work, podcast or podcasts, at cybersecuritymarketingsociety.com. We love to hear from experts in the space of cybersecurity marketing and cyber go-to-market. And see you next Wednesday for another episode. Thank you.